the reason why we're doing redundancy and restructure is that at a previous lecture, we did one generally on dismissal, and redundancy came up afterwards as a issue of particular concern. And so as a reason, we're going to try and look at how to get redundancy right. And in principle, there's a very kind of simple process that you can follow to get redundancies right. But in practice, as ever, there are so many different ways that redundancy can be challenged. And, for example, if an employee says to the employer, hang on, the reason why you're selecting me for redundancy is because 6 months ago, a year ago, I raised an issue about my contract. I whistle-blew, and that's the reason why you're selecting me for redundancy. Or it could be people alleging the outcome of redundancy exercise is predetermined. Or because they're pregnant. Or because you've simply chosen poor criteria. Or the process was rushed. Or what about another role for me to do? Or is it because I'm a trade union activist? Is it because I set up a trade union or try to organise a trade union within the workplace? In fact, not 1,001, 10,001. There are so many ways. I looked at cases in preparing for this lecture, and there were so many different factual circumstances in which people had challenged redundancy that I thought, in fact, we've just got to concentrate on the ways to get it right. So the aim today is how to dismiss properly and fairly and reasonably on grounds of redundancy. The aim is to an attempt to give you a step-by-step approach to enable you to prove, hopefully, that redundancy or restructure is the reason for the employee selection, and that you have fully consulted with the employee, that you've selected fairly, and to do that, there is quite a few steps you've got to take. Now, these steps are all in the notes. The slide is a little bit of a truncated version of the notes. But a fair process involves many, many steps. And in fact, in the notes, I've put about 10 steps. I've truncated those a little bit for this lecture. But first of all, you've got to identify and record your business reasoning for making redundancies. Critical first step. If you can't show that you have got valid grounds for making redundancies, then, and the employee challenges that redundancy, you may not be able to, as a first step, even be able to prove redundancy as the reason for dismissal. Once you've identified your business criteria, you have to apply a fair process. A fair process involves identifying a proper pool from which you're going to select people for redundancy, and secondly, a fair selection criteria. Following that, when you've thought about your process and you've thought about your selection criteria and you've thought about your pool, you've got to consult. Consultation is two-way, it's not lip service, it is speaking and it is listening and it's taking on board and it's responding to constructive suggestions. Most importantly, and something that should never be lost sight of, the aim of a redundancy exercise is to avoid redundancies. The aim is to stop redundancies happening, see whether you can redeploy people. If you can't show that you've made every effort at the end of a redundancy exercise to get somebody another job within the business, there's a possibility that the redundancy will be found to be unfair. Not always done. Keep written evidence of decisions and reasoning at all stages of the redundancy process. Firstly, you have got to consider your business reasons. As I said, employees can challenge your business reasons. They can say, hang on, I don't accept when you say that there's a lack of orders in the pipeline, and therefore I don't accept that. You are going to have to provide, as the cases say, proper information to employees to show the grounds upon which that decision to make redundancies has been made. So that's the first step. If you haven't got that, the whole of the rest of the process is going to be built on very shaky grounds. What kind of evidence? Well, really, whatever is reasonable in the circumstances. Again, there's 1,001 ways to challenge redundancy. There's 101 bits of, criteria that you could be using as a business. It does depend upon your business circumstances. But the kind of general evidence would be, you've undertaken a strategic review of the business and you've decided that you're going to concentrate on certain areas rather than others, meaning that possibly whole areas of the business are going to be wound down. It could be declining sales. It could be technological changes, meaning that you need less people to do a particular role. It could be that you're asking people to do a role in a different way. That may mean that in fact there's not a reduction in the amount of people that are required to do a particular role, but it's just that you haven't got the skills within the workforce to do it in a particular way, and that may be a reorganisation and a redundancy. But whatever it is, you need proper business reasons and you need to keep the evidence really from the outset. The next thing you should do at this stage really, the strategic stage, the business reasons stage, is decide where the redundancies are needed. And again, you should be approaching that with evidence, linking it to the strategic review. If the strategic review says one thing and then the evidence shows that you've targeted particular people in the redundancy process, trying to link the two, and there is maybe a disjunct between what the strategic review says and the people who you're attempting to make redundant, and those employees then cry wolf, then you've got difficulty. You've got to show sensible commercial or operational reasons for making those redundancies. Now, very technical issues are involved where you've got, really over 20 redundancies. If it's over 100, you need to start the consultation. The next step is consultation. After you've come up with your business reasons, after you've come up with your strategy, after you've come up with the numbers, after you've come up as a business, where you want to have the cuts, the next thing you should be doing is consulting with the employees on those, what are at this stage only proposals. If you go to them and say, this is it, take it or leave it, that's not the consultation. Consultation involves going and talking to the employees. Now, a fair process, and this is what you're consulting on. What kind of pool are you going to be selecting the people who you wish to make redundant? What's the size of the pool? Who must it contain? Should it contain employees who are involved in other areas of the business, but maybe have similar or transferable skills? Have you done it before? If so, is there a particular way that's been agreed, or have you always done it in a particular way? Bottom line is, can you justify the pool as reasonable? Again, if you've got some evidence and some justification for targeting, for choosing a pool in a particular way, and there is no direct evidence that you've got a kind of funny shaped pool that's including people who really want to get rid of, but who you can't justify putting in the pool in any other way, if there's a kind of predetermined argument. As long as it looks reasonable and it kind of squarely meets in redundancy the fundamental, it must include all employees whose work is, where the work is diminishing. As long as you can show it's reasonable, you should be okay.